Hello, everybody. This is Mr. Burke again, coming from the confines of my home. I want to talk to you a little bit about the work that you did this week on chapter 24, which was on the Great Depression and the New Deal. One of the things that you want to remember as you're looking at the Great Depression, with the causes of the Great Depression, the many causes of it, that the stock market crash was the indicator that the United States was in the Great Depression, but not the cause of the Great Depression. Pay attention to all the many causes of the Great Depression. It is also important to remember that Herbert Hoover was very competent. He was a very able administrator, as we saw during World War I with the Food Administration and getting that food to millions of starving people over in Europe at the beginning of World War I and then throughout the Russian Civil War. The problem with Hoover was that he was not imaginative. He was not creative. He was using old policies to try and solve the problems of the Depression. That's a big difference between Franklin Roosevelt and Hoover. Roosevelt's willing to try new things. He's pragmatic. He's creative. Trial and error. He's going to try something. If it doesn't work, he'll try something new. And that's what the New Deal is all about, trial and error. When Roosevelt's campaigning in 1932 about a New Deal, he has no idea what it means, but he just keeps offering the people this New Deal, offering them hope, offering a vision of optimism. That happy days are here again was Roosevelt's big theme song during the Depression when he was campaigning. In his first inaugural address, he will tell the American people that the only thing they have to fear is fear itself. And there's so many parallels that you can draw between Roosevelt back then during the Great Depression, and the situation that the country is going through right now, especially that idea of pragmatism, that idea of creativity and trying to figure out what we're going to do with the economy and how we're going to get that economy going again. One of the other big differences between Hoover and Roosevelt is that Hoover does not want to provide direct relief for the American people. Roosevelt, through the New Deal, is going to provide that direct relief, immediate aid, immediate assistance to the American people. Relief, get the aid, get the food to the starving people. Recovery, get the economy going again, put the economy back on its feet, let it walk again. And then reform, taking steps to try and stop another depression from ever happening again in the United States. Relief, recovery, reform, the New Deal. Hoover's big plan will be to raise taxes, tried before. That's what he's going to go back to. Towards the end of his administration, he will use the Reconstruction Finance Corporation, which will set up a precursor for TARP that we'll see used in 2008 by the Bush administration and the incoming Obama administration to try and get us out of the Great Recession of 2008. And Hoover will also begin to create jobs like work on Boulder Dam. Okay, that will set the foundations for the New Deal, but it's too little, too late. The election, as you know, takes place in November of 1932, but the inauguration is not until March of 1933. Between November of 1932 and March of 1933, the economy will get progressively worse, and that's why Congress will move to pass the 20th Amendment along with the approval of the states, which will shorten the lame duck period. And now the election is in November of the even year, and the inauguration is now in January of the odd year. So pay attention to the 20th Amendment. One of the things as you study the New Deal that you want to pay attention to is what the New Deal did. It focused on economic aid. Roosevelt was not concerned with trying to improve the conditions for minorities. Roosevelt was not concerned in trying to improve education throughout the United States. Those are big differences between the New Deal and the Great Society. Lyndon Johnson in the 1960s not only wants to revamp the economy, but he also wants to help improve conditions for minority groups and also focus more on education. Roosevelt's concern is more the economy. When it comes to minority groups with Roosevelt, focus on how black Americans in the cities will benefit from the New Deal programs as jobs will be created, but Southern blacks will not experience those same changes. In fact, many Southern blacks will be hurt with programs like the AAA, which will reduce the number of sharecroppers as you try and take land out of farm production and lower the amount of farm goods being produced. Also, Franklin Roosevelt will not support a federal anti-lynching bill. Remember, Roosevelt, as a Democrat, needs the support of southern states in order to win his elections. Another key group to focus in on during Roosevelt's administration is women. Frances Perkins becomes the first female cabinet member. She becomes Secretary of Labor. Frances Perkins will make her name known in New York City shortly after the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire. She will advocate for workers' rights and better conditions there, and that's a big, big achievement of the New Deal. Workers will gain better rights. Remember the National Labor Relations Act, also known as the Wagner Act, called the Wagner Act because Senator Robert Wagner from New York State will push for that act. Pay attention to the amount of union members, the amount of the increase in union membership during the New Deal. In fact, the New Deal will be the high point for union members. As you get past World War II, we'll see the number of union members begin to steadily decline. I want to provide you with the answers and some notes on the Great Depression and the New Deal. So if we come over here, okay, what I have here are mixed economic signals during the 1920s. How some groups are doing really, really well and other groups are suffering. Farmers. The farmers are going to experience the Great Depression before the rest of the country does. And Coolidge and Hoover will not be aware of their issues or won't be in tune to it. Labor problems. You will begin to see setbacks in the 1920s on minimum wage laws, on union membership. And then the Great Depression. Compare it to the other panics that we had. The Great Depression is probably most similar to the Panic of 1893. If it was not for the Great Depression, the Panic of 1893 would rank as the worst in U.S. history. When it comes to the stock market crash, you want to remember what people were doing. People were speculating. People were buying on margin. Those are two big flaws in the stock market. Okay, causes of the crash. One of the most important causes of the crash was the uneven distribution of wealth. Big problem that we're seeing in the country today. Stock market speculation, buying on margin. Speculation, the excessive use of credit. Americans in the 1920s enjoying the installment plan with that false sense of prosperity. The overproduction of consumer goods. Factories were producing too much, and the American people couldn't purchase it. And that weak farm economy, the high debt, the fact that we needed less farmers, the fact that farm technology was improving, producing more, and that Europe was beginning to come back after World War I. There was not as much demand for United States goods. Now, one of the big problems with Hoover and other economists at the time was the failure to understand that the global economy was suffering, the failure to understand that the world was so interconnected even as early as the 1930s. And that's why when Hoover does one of his early plans, which in 1930 is the Hawley Smoot Tariff, most economists today say that is the reason why the Depression was so severe and why it lasted so long. The Hawley Smoot Tariff, which raised tariff rates to almost 60%, cut off all worldwide trade. And that's why coming out of World War II, we will begin to move away from tariffs and begin as a country and a world to move more towards free trade. Okay, this is a timeline here of the major events leading up to the Great Depression. Don't forget Hoover's actions with the bonus army, that bonus army that was due a bonus for fighting during World War I. And will go down to Congress and ask Congress to get their money up front because they don't believe that they're going to have it there. And Congress votes no. The bonus army will set up a Hooverville, a shantytown, outside in front of Congress. As you know, with all shantytowns and Hoovervilles, crime will begin to break out. And when that crime breaks out, Hoover will offer to pay for these veterans to return back to their homes. They refuse, and Hoover will send in the army under the leadership of Douglas MacArthur. The army will use gas to clear out the people, and a baby dies. And it just makes the United States government look like it's turning the back on veterans, people that had fought in World War I for the safety of our country. As you're viewing this answer key, take a look and see how your answers match up and fill in the missing spots. You had that free response question, which I often reference throughout the year. Analyze the ways in which the Great Depression altered the American social fabric in the 1930s. As I said, that term social fabric caused a lot of problems for students when this was asked. If you look over here, you'll see when they talk about social fabric, they will have the conditions of the Depression, the approach, what you will see during the Hoover administration, and then how it impacted, how it changed social class status. Farm stress, impact on family life, and the relationship of the people. Families could come together during this time. Families could also be driven apart. Women during the Depression will suffer more discrimination. As women, we saw more women in the workplace, store clerks, secretaries. They will be pressured to give up their jobs so that men could take their jobs. A great movie about the Great Depression. There are many. Seabiscuit's one. One that I like is Cinderella Man, talking about the conditions of the Great Depression. Here's another essay question you can see from 2002, and this is on a couple of your sheets. The relief measures offered by Franklin Roosevelt, the recovery measures, and then the reform measures. I would pay attention to these, especially the reform measures, the ones that are still around with us today, as you guys are aware of the changes that the AP is making with the tests that you'll be taking this year. We should know more on Friday, April 3rd, about how the AP US test is going to look like. They're a little bit slow with making the changes and coming up with their plan, but they'll get it. April 3rd is the date. These notes, I put these in my webpage. You should be able to print them out. I know I have added notes on the side, that's why I'm going a little bit slower here. Okay, famous cartoon from the Great Depression about putting your money away, as many Americans did, but the banks, your savings accounts were not insured, and that led to the run on the banks. You may remember the Christmas movie, It's a Wonderful Life, with the great run on the bank scene that you could take a look at and see what that was like. Remember John Steinbeck's book, The Grapes of Wrath. The Grapes of Wrath will deal with the Dust Bowl. Here's a letter from a Dust Bowl survivor. Okay, and the conditions of the Dust Bowl. To address the issues with the Dust Bowl, that's why Franklin Roosevelt will set up the AAA to try and take land out of use, try and teach new farm techniques, rotation of crops. We will first pay the farmers to destroy their crops. The first AAA will be declared unconstitutional. The second AAA will pay farmers to produce less. That first 100 days, every president since Franklin Roosevelt will be judged on that first 100 days, as Congress will pass a series of programs that will offer relief and some recovery to the American people. I asked you guys to define some of the programs. Here are the basics. Remember on the right where I have extremists there, Huey Long, Father Coughlin, Dr. Townsend. These are the critics of the New Deal, the most dangerous one being Huey Long. Huey Long was in favor of redistribution of wealth. Huey Long was a popular politician. So he will be the senator of Louisiana and the governor at the same time, which is not allowed. Huey Long will build up his own security force. He will end up being assassinated as he's planning to run for the presidency. Many people believe that he was killed by his own bodyguard. The Kingfish was a movie with Sean Penn. It was done a couple times. Sean Penn was the most recent actor of it that portrays the life of Huey Long for those that are interested. After Roosevelt's reelected in 1936, in 1937, he will propose the court packing plan. Pay attention to that court packing plan. In 1937, Roosevelt will want to increase the number of Supreme Court justices from 9 to 15. He will say it's because there's too many judges that are old. He wants to help them out with the workload. In reality, what he wants to do is change the complexion of the court. You have a couple programs, the AAA, the NIRA, that were declared unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. Roosevelt is worried that other programs will be declared unconstitutional. In order to change the number of justices from 9 to 15, he has to get the approval of Congress. And this is the first time Congress in 1937 will say no to Roosevelt. They will see this as a threat to checks and balances. Here are some of the recovery measures during the New Deal. Be aware of those programs that were declared unconstitutional by the court and why. AP likes to ask that. On the right, I have the twilight of the New Deal, how in 1937 we will go through a second recession. Keynesian economists who believe that the job of the government is to create jobs, not worry about the deficit, get the people back to work, and then you will try and fix the deficit, will say that in 1937 Roosevelt should have spent more money. He doesn't. He starts to worry about the budget, he pulls back, and unemployment will go back up to 15%. Critics of the New Deal will cite the growth in the federal deficit. And always remember that it'll be World War II that will get the that will get the United States out of the Great Depression, not the New Deal. The New Deal coalition will be made up of white Southerners, which we've seen is consistent with support for the Democrats, African Americans, as I mentioned, in the cities, ethnic minorities, union members, and Midwestern farmers. This New Deal coalition will lead the Democrats from the time of Roosevelt's first election in 1932 all the way until the 1970s. And then here are the reform measures of the New Deal. Okay, and again, pay attention to my notes on the right side. Okay, what I was mentioning before, the impact of the New Deal. It is a program of reform rather than revolution. It's a new direction for the federal government. The federal government's going to be concerned about the social welfare of the American people. Think of a program like Social Security, which offers a lot more than just aid to the elderly. If we go back up here, you can see Social Security will provide retirement benefits for the elderly, but also unemployment insurance, aid to the disabled, aid to widows and children, aid to families of dependent children. So Social Security is a large program that will be expanded upon by programs like Medicare and Medicaid during the Johnson administration in the 1960s. Pay attention to the National Labor Relations Act, sometimes called the Wagner Act, and also the Fair Labor Standards Act. Those are big achievements for workers' rights. Some of you guys benefit from them today with your minimum wage. Key aspects of the New Deal that were not included, as I mentioned earlier during this video. This is an overview of the New Deal program, similar to what I've been going through page by page so far. Okay, and what I included in your notes there. Now here is a sheet. New Deal critics. Okay, these are critics coming at Roosevelt from the left. These are critics that saying Roosevelt's not doing enough. The one that Roosevelt most feared was Huey Long. He feared that Huey Long was going to challenge him. There were still hunger strikes in the country at the time. Franklin Roosevelt will feel great relief when he finds out that Huey Long is no longer around. Father Coughlin will lose support because he'll show himself to be anti-Semitic in the 1930s as the Holocaust will begin to rage. And Dr. Francis Townsend is the one that FDR will utilize his plan. Dr. Francis Townsend wants a pension for old age people, and that's what Roosevelt will incorporate when it comes to Social Security. This sheet here will have Roosevelt's critics from the right and also his court packing plan. And again, these note pages you should be able to find within the web page. Remember, each week I'm putting all of the assignments up on my web page, and each morning I will put the assignment that's due that day in Edmodo. Each day you should be submitting that work through Edmodo. The decade of the Democrats. In 1932, Roosevelt's elected because of the Depression. In 1936, Roosevelt is re-elected because of the Depression. The American people are happy with the New Deal programs. They opt to keep him in office. And you can see in 1936, Roosevelt will win re-election overwhelmingly. You look at the electoral vote total, you look at the popular vote total, one of the biggest landslides in American history. Now in 1940, Roosevelt's going to break the two-term tradition, and he's going to run for an unprecedented third term. Remember, there is no 22nd Amendment at this time. The first U.S. president to really consider a third term was Ulysses S. Grant. He will turn it down. Teddy Roosevelt will try and challenge the two-term tradition when he runs in 1912 with the Progressive Party. Roosevelt runs in 1940 because the country is now beginning to turn its attention towards the coming of World War II. World War II will start in 1939. The United States position will be the same in World War II as it was in World War I, where we'll try and avoid it. We'll try and focus on the Depression. The problem is the United States is going to be more active in helping its allies. when you're reading chapter 25 and looking at the coming of World War II, pay close attention to Roosevelt's quarantine speech. That's where he outlines what the United States should be doing in preparation. This long essay question is the one that I gave you the answer a couple pages back. If I go too fast with any of these videos, if anybody needs anything cleared up or you're not sure about anything, please feel free to shoot me an email or post me a message on Edmodo. Summarizing here, I have supporters of the New Deal and critics of the New Deal. You see the long essay question there on the bottom, compare and contrast the programs of the progressives with those of the New Dealers. I know that was on the last page of your study guide for chapter 24. I also included an answer key in the notes last week, so take a look at that notes page. That will have that. Here's a cause and effect sheet that I've done in the past on the New Deal. I didn't ask you guys to do it, but you can take a look. Hopefully it will help. Each year, Time magazine in the summer focuses on a different American that had a large impact on United States history. It could be any individual, sometimes politicians, sometimes scientists, sometimes writers. Back in 2009, shortly after Barack Obama's election and inauguration, Time magazine decided to do Franklin Roosevelt. And this is an enduring New Deal, a look at how FDR's programs have shaped today's society. And again, it's a little bit dated, it's from 2009. But you can see here the programs that were created by Roosevelt and how they were still in effect in 2009 and still around today. Here are some multiple choice questions that I used to give as a take-home test on the New Deal. A true-false reading quiz I used to give in the past. And then a fill-in-the-blank quiz that I used to give in the past. Now, here is the answer key to the test that I asked you to work on Wednesday. This is chapters 22, 23, and 24, the 59 question quiz. Some of you guys had questions on how this was going to be scored. This will not be a standalone grade in PowerSchool. As I said, what I'm going to do at the end of each week, I'll see that the work that you did, and you'll get a grade noted there in your PowerSchool, okay? For most of this is designed to help us, okay, to only boost our scores. We all know that you're going through some difficult times, some questions with all this. Just each day submit that sheet through Edmodo that you're supposed to be working on. And if you have any questions, if you have any concerns, reach out to me. Now, a couple things as we end today's video. As I mentioned, Friday, April 3rd is when we'll have more information about the changes to the AP test. This week, you'll be covering Chapter 25, which is our last chapter that will be covered on the AP test, World War II. On Friday, you have a bit of a different activity. It's an activity through AP Classroom. I put together 103 questions on time period 7 that will open up on Monday. On Friday, the only assignment you will get is to answer those questions. I would advise you to try and do 15 questions a night. This way, so when you get to Friday, you only have 40 questions to work on, not 103. It's a little bit different, but it will set us up well. So we'll finish chapter 25 this week. I'll have another video up next weekend that will give you the answer key to World War II. And then what we will start on Monday, April 6th, is review assignments. We'll start periods 1 and 2 on Monday and Tuesday. Wednesday would be our last day of class before what would have been Easter break, spring break. And over spring break, I'm going to give you 3 assignments. One on time period 1 on time periods 4, 5, and 6. They'll be fill-in questions. You'll work on them over the vacation. That will be the only work that you'll have over the vacation. And then this way, when we come back, we've got 2 weeks to review before the AP test, where we will utilize AP Classroom. We'll utilize Khan Academy videos and other podcasts that we can look as a review. College Board is supposed to put some review videos up for you guys. I know they put up one for time period 8. Not sure why they did that. I think it was just a test to see how it went. If you have questions, please let me know. I hope all is well with you guys, and I hope to see you guys soon. Bye.